it's Penny here, and today I wanted to talk about some of my favorite young adult books because I feel like recently I keep saying quite negative things about young adult books, like not wanting to pick them up because I'm not sure they're going to be for me. And it is true that I am not part of the target market for young adult books, so it isn't really fair to expect that I'm going to like all of them or even a lot of them. However, I do still keep picking up young adult books because there have been some that I've really loved. And I think finding those books that I really love is worth the risk of reading some books that I don't enjoy as much. I also think that while young adult books do sometimes have problems, a lot of those same problems are present in some adult books, and there are certain themes and topics that young adult books do better than a lot of adult books, which is why I still think it's worth picking some of them up, even if, like me, you've been an adult for a little while now. So I've kind of split these books up by genre, fantasy, blending into science fiction, and then a couple of mystery thrillers at the end. And we'll start off with a couple of more well-known authors. So firstly, let's talk about Maggie Stiefvater, who is one of my favorite authors. And actually, All the Crooked Saints, I thought this was an adult book, but looking it up, it says it's a young adult book, which just goes to show that it's not always as clear as you think. This is an absolutely beautiful magical realism book about this family that grants miracles and the people who are seeking those miracles. Being Maggie Stiefvater, the miracles are really weird and strange, and the book goes in all sorts of unexpected directions, but I really loved this one, especially in terms of looking at the darkness within yourself. Another very popular series by Maggie Stiefvater is The Raven Cycle. My favorite of this series is definitely The Dream Thieves, where we get a bit of dream magic, and her newest series, The Dreamers, is kind of taking this concept even further. This whole series is very hard to describe because it's about a group of friends looking for a dead Welsh king who is able to grant them wishes, but we've also got a girl named Blue who has been told that whoever her first kisses, they're gonna die. And of course we got the dream magic. There's lots of weird things going on, and it's quite a lovely series. I think especially just for the friendship group and some of the ways that it looks at family as well as magic. Another Maggie Stiefvater book that I don't own but I would love to is The Scorpio Races. This is all about this island where every year they have a race where they race the water horses, which are these very aggressive and violent horses that come out of the ocean. And we follow a young girl who really needs to win the race in order to keep her family home, as well as a boy who needs to win in order to secure his future, let's say. Maggie Stiefvater's writing is so beautiful that I really loved it. And since I'm talking about Maggie Stiefvater, I may as well mention the Shiver series. It wasn't necessarily a favorite of mine, but I still did really enjoy it. It follows a girl who is falling in love with a werewolf. The werewolves in this story only change to wolves when the temperature gets too low, which I thought was a really interesting concept. And even though there was probably a bit too much romance, especially quite young romance, for it to be the perfect book for me, I still did quite enjoy where the story went. Then another very popular and well-known YA author is Victoria Schwab. So I think I do particularly prefer her adult works where she writes as V.E. Schwab, although I noticed that my copies of The Savage Song and Our Dark Duet also say V.E. Schwab, even though this is definitely YA. So in this series we have a world where any violent act creates a real-life monster, and the kind of monster depends on the kind of violent act. And we follow this boy named August who was created during a violent act, and he really would prefer to be human. And we also, on the other side of town, follow this girl called Kate, whose father is kind of a gangster and runs that side of the city, and she really wants to prove that she is as violent and monstrous as him so that she can gain his approval. I really loved the way that the story incorporated music. Again, I would say I didn't particularly enjoy the relationship aspects. I'm not sure that that is one of Victoria Schwab's strengths, but I still really loved this world and this story. The other Victoria Schwab YA book I read is this one. This is actually a bind-up of two, The Archived and The Unbound. So this is set in a world where there is a library of the dead. So when people die, all their memories are bound up in this library, and sometimes those avatars of the dead escape the library, and we follow this girl whose job is to try and capture them and put them back. But she's trying to balance that with her everyday life and not being able to tell her family that that's what she does. I will admit that I really liked the archived, but I did think the unbound was a bit of a disappointment. However, there was talk of a TV show being made of this series, which I would be super hyped for. So I'm still hoping, even though I haven't heard anything about it recently, I'm still hoping that that will definitely happen. Okay, then I do have a series by another fairly popular author, and that is Holly Black and the White Cat trilogy. Is that what this trilogy is actually called? The Curse Workers trilogy is what it's called. So this series, I admit, I found this at a book fair, and I bought it because I had vaguely heard of Holly Black at the time, and there was a cat on the cover. Really, it was mostly the cat. But in this series, some people have magical abilities. There's several different categories of magic abilities, but they all relate to touching with their hands, and because of that, people have to wear gloves because that's the only way other people can feel safe, that they're not going to have people using their magical powers on them. And there's this general idea that people with these powers are more unsavory and not to be trusted. But our main character's mother often puts little holes in her gloves so that she can still manipulate people that way. And our main character gets wrapped up in this big conspiracy where he thinks he has done something bad. But has he? Maybe not. There's a whole bunch going on, and also I just really like the covers of all of these books, not just the one with the cat on the front. Okay, actually I also have another really popular series on this pile, and that is Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor and its sequel Muse of Nightmares, which I don't own yet, but I really want to because I loved both these books. I think I almost liked the second book more, maybe. These books have just such lyrical writing styles. We're following Strange the Dreamer as he learns about this city called Weep, that one day its name just disappeared and everyone forgot all about it. But then something happens where some people get a chance to travel to this city and try to figure out what has gone wrong with it. Again, this one does have a bit of romance in it, which sometimes got a little bit annoying for me, but this is more of a me not liking romance thing, not a me not liking YA thing. And there was enough in the story other than the romance that I still really enjoyed this. Although I do know people who don't like slower books tend to not like this. Then another YA book trilogy that I really loved is the Half Bad trilogy. Again, is that what this is called? It doesn't say. Anyway, the Half Bad series is about this boy named Nathan. Did I make that up? Who knows? I think his name is Nathan, and he is half white witch, half black witch. So in this world, white witches are the good ones, black witches are the bad ones. Or so that's what everyone believes, but there's some questions around that. So because Nathan is half black witch, they have locked him away a lot of the time, and when it comes to his 16th birthday, I think, when they're supposed to get 3 gifts from their parent and gain their magical abilities, he has some difficulty with getting this to happen. Now I know that some people will put off this first book because it does have sections written in second person, which not everybody likes, but I have seen a few other books with second person in them be more accepted recently, so maybe if you're not as scared of second person as maybe you used to be, you could give this book another go. I just think these are so creative, and when we got to the final book in the trilogy, I bawled my eyes out for about 20 minutes because it just broke my heart. There's also some really creative bits. Let me see if I can find one. Okay, so I remember when I was reading this, texting my friend to say, I think my book is broken. But it makes sense in the story, and it was so well done. So, this is a series I really loved and I do recommend. Even though maybe Nathan can be a bit annoying at sometimes. Okay, so then another quite popular YA fantasy quartet that I really enjoyed was the 3 Dark Crowns series by Kendare Blake. Now this one, I do know that the perspective it's written from is like third person present tense, which doesn't flow as well as I would have liked, and there's also so many characters that it does take a little bit to get into. But once I got onto it, I just loved the way that it all came together, and I came to care about the characters and be really interested in what they were thinking and doing. So if you haven't heard about this series, we have 3 triplet queens who were separated when they were 6, I think, and now that they are 16, they're expected to fight to the death, and whoever wins gets to become the queen. Each one is supposed to have a different magical ability. However, they don't all seem to have the abilities that they're supposed to have, which definitely puts some of them at a disadvantage going into this competition. And there's a lot of politics going on because the different factions of magical families want different queens to win the queendom. There's also a lot of historical stuff going on, and also these sisters just trying to work out their relationship despite everything that's going on. Oh, and also, this island is this really dark, witchy island, and I really liked the vibe of the whole story. Then another YA book that I really loved was The Apocalypse of Elena Mendoza by Shaun David Hutchinson. So this book is about this girl named Elena Mendoza who suddenly gains the ability to perform miracles and heal people. She also starts having visions of inanimate objects talking to her. There's one particularly memorable one where I remember a My Little Pony talking to her at a party, and these inanimate objects start telling her that the end of the world is coming and that she's the only one who can do something about it. This is such a quirky book, but it was just so much fun. Now we're gonna kind of transition from fantasy to science fiction by talking about Ryan Graudin, who has written a couple of YA books that I really enjoyed. So firstly, we've got the Wolf by Wolf duology. So there's this book and the second book, Blood for Blood. So in Wolf by Wolf, we're in this alternate history where the Nazis won the war. So we're following this young Jewish girl who was in a concentration camp where some interesting things happened to her, but now she is going to take the place of this other girl and enter this motorcycle race, because at the end of the motorcycle race, whoever wins gets to meet Hitler, and she has a plan to kill Hitler at the end of this race when she wins. But first she has to win. There were just some really amazing ideas in this book, and the relationships were done so well. The whole motorcycle race was really action-packed, and even though I don't really care about motorcycle races, I think it was still really interesting. And when I got to the end of this, the ending just meant I had to quickly get my hands on the second book and read it. In fact, that's why I don't have it physically, because I grabbed it from the library as quickly as I could, rather than waiting for books to get delivered. Because in New Zealand, it's actually often quicker to get books from the library than it is to order them and have them shipped all the way here. Weird. Anyway, another Ryan Graudin book that I really enjoyed is Invictus. So this is a time travel book. So Invictus is set in a world where time travel is just a regular, well-known thing, but it's very regulated because they're afraid that people will go back and change the past and ruin the future. So people aren't allowed to change the past. You have to get qualified in order to go back in time. However, we follow this crew of illegal time travelers who go back in time, steal famous historical artifacts just before they go missing in history, and then bring them forward to the future in order to sell them for a profit. However, along the way, they discover that there is something wrong with the universe and they have to try and fix it. Now, I'm not sure that the time travel logic completely made sense in this. However, I still just really loved the friend group in this. There's a red panda in this and a mathematician. I really enjoyed this one. I think it's probably not quite as dark as I would have hoped it to be, but at the time I read it, I just needed something quite light and enjoyable, and this was it. Then another YA book I enjoyed is Illuminae by J. Kristoff and Amie Kaufmann. This one a lot of people talk about. It's all written in multimedia. So different interview files and pictures. Wow, I feel like none of the good pictures came up in that flick through. Anyway, it's written in multimedia. It's really interesting. I'll admit that the main reason I got this, even though I'd heard about lots of people liking it, I wasn't sure it would be for me. However, I saw it for $7 in the shop, and I haven't attempted to get the sticker off because I don't think it will come off. But I just thought this cover looked quite interesting, the way that, like, underneath the dust jacket, it's like all crossed out text, and then some of it is transparent and you can see through. I just thought that was cool, so for $7 I decided to buy it. And luckily I really enjoyed it. It is all about this illegal mining planet that gets attacked by this competing company, and they have to go on the run, and they're not able to get anybody else to come and support them. And at the same time there is a bit of a disease spreading throughout the spaceship that they're on the run in, and their artificial intelligence is possibly not thinking straight. I really loved the AI in this series. I loved him so much. So if you keep seeing people talking about this and you're not sure if it's for you, it is quite a good read. And even though it's like 500 pages, because of the multimedia aspect, it's actually a super quick read, which is sometimes another benefit of young adult books, because even though right now I'm reading Oathbringer, which is like 1200 pages, and I'm really loving getting stuck into a big, long, in-depth book, sometimes you also just want something that's a little bit easier to read, and YA can often be that, although not always, because there are some big chunky YA books as well. Anyway, another young adult science fiction that I really loved was The Diabolic by S.J. Kincaid, and the sequel, The Empress, which I don't own but I would really love to. And very soon, the third book in the trilogy, the final book, The Nemesis, is coming out, which I'm super excited about. So this book is about this genetically engineered bodyguard who is assigned to protect this one noble girl in this world where they have all this technology but they're not allowed to learn about it or read books or study, and so slowly things are breaking down. And then because of some political machinations going on, our bodyguard has to take the place of the girl that she usually protects and go to the main court and get even more involved in all of this politics. I know that some people really didn't like the direction that the second book went in, but I just thought it was so cool how unexpected it was, and I'm really not sure whether the third book will go even further in that direction or whether it will come back to some kind of circular conclusion. I don't know, but either way, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna love it. Then I also really love The Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer. I've only got the first two books, but I do want to get more in the series. I especially love this first cover, although there are new covers now and they're quite beautiful too. If I just moved, it's not because of the glitch in the Matrix, it's because my camera battery ran out. Anyway, I was talking about The Lunar Chronicles. So the new covers are really beautiful, but I kind of just prefer this cover of Cinder, maybe not the other books in the series. It is actually a quartet. So each book in the series is a fairy tale retelling of a different fairy tale. So the first book is Cinderella, the second book is Little Red Riding Hood, third book, Cress, is Rapunzel, and the fourth book, Winter, is Snow White. But they also all combine into a bigger story where we're learning about this war between Earth and the people who live on the moon, who are also just from Earth really, but they've lived on the moon for a long time, so they've kind of become a separate race. There's also a plague going on around the earth which they're trying to deal with, and I think I just really liked how the different fairy tales were incorporated into this science fiction world, especially Cinder. I think Cinder was my absolute favorite, but I still liked the rest of the books, and I thought the way that she continued the stories of each character in the further books was also really well done, and I just really enjoyed the series. Then, another YA science fiction that I really enjoyed is The Loneliest Girl in the Universe. This one I find really hard to talk about because the thing that I enjoyed the most about it, I feel like if you know about that thing, or even a hint of that thing going into it, you probably won't get the enjoyment out of the thing. It's so hard to talk about. Anyway, primarily this is a story about this girl who is on a spaceship traveling to another planet, but it's going to take like decades for her to get to this new planet, and they're traveling with a whole bunch of embryos so that they can populate this planet when they get there, and when they communicate with Earth it takes months for them to get a reply. However, then Earth does send another spaceship after her, and because it's newer it can go faster, and so it's slowly catching up with her, and their communication going back and forth between these two ships is initially months and months between letters, but it gets closer and closer. And I just really enjoyed this so much. I can't tell you why, but I loved it. I also really like the cover. I do think on average YA books tend to have better covers than adult books. Not always, but often. Then another YA science fiction series that I really enjoy is the Skyward series by Brandon Sanderson. Now, Brandon Sanderson is an author I really love, although most of his work is adult works, although I have seen the Mistborn trilogy sometimes put as YA because it probably is on that border where it could be either. But Skyward is specifically targeted at the YA market, and in this, humans have been trapped on this planet. They have to live underground because whenever they try to escape, these aliens shoot them down. We follow this girl named Spencer who really wants to become a pilot so that she can help with protecting her people, but unfortunately her father ran away from a really important space battle, and because of that her family has a really bad reputation, and so she has to fight against that reputation. But of course, in typical Brandon Sanderson style, there is a lot more to it. The second book did go in a slightly strange direction, but the bigger concept is something I'm really interested to see what he will do with in the third book, which I think will be the final book. I guess we'll see. Okay, now we're going to move into more mystery thriller type ones, but we're going to do it by going through Neverworld Wake, which I honestly have no idea what genre this is. It's kind of fantasy. It's got time loops in it, so it's kind of science fiction, maybe. It's much more fantastical than sciencey in terms of the time loops though. And there is also a murder mystery that they're trying to solve. So in this book, basically a girl is driving with her friends, they have a car accident, and then they get stuck in this time loop. And in the end they get told they can't get out of this time loop till they choose one of the group to survive and the rest of them are going to die. Choosing which one is going to survive turns out to be a very difficult situation. And so they spend a long time in this time loop. At the same time, they are trying to find some information about this girl's boyfriend and what happened with his death, which happened well before the time loop. I will say I didn't particularly enjoy the ending of this, but I just like to pretend that that bit didn't happen because I feel like that bit almost made the whole thing like a dream, but I just pretend that didn't happen. And if you ignore that, then this was pretty cool. Then we also have the Truly Devious series by Maureen Johnson. So this is a trilogy, however, there has just been a fourth book released, which will be really interesting because the main mystery was wrapped up in the first 3 books. So we're following this girl named Stevie who's very talented, and she's going to go to this very exclusive school up in these mountains at this really fancy place. And you only get in if you have a very special talent or interest. So Stevie really wants to become a detective. And 50 years ago there was a murder at this school, and so we're kind of following some of the different characters back 50 years ago and finding out about the murder that way, at the same time as Stevie is uncovering the clues and trying to solve the murder herself. Even though sometimes I felt like the school aspect of this and some of the relationships were perhaps a little bit young adult for me, and that's only again because I'm an old woman, and so teen relationships are not the kind of relationships I really have anymore. I did those when I was a teen and I didn't particularly enjoy them then, so I don't always particularly enjoy reading about them. But I still really enjoyed this series because I loved the way that the mystery was put together, and I just found Stevie to be a really interesting person. Another YA thriller that I really enjoyed was Small Spaces by Sarah Epstein. So in this book, we're following this girl who had a very traumatic experience when she was younger. Her imaginary friend stole her best friend away at a carnival, and because of that, she's now mute. She doesn't talk. So now she's older and her parents have moved her family back to this town where this originally happened. And then strange things start happening again and she's trying to work out, is it her imaginary friend? Is it something else? Is it maybe something that she's doing? I really enjoyed the way that things were slowly revealed, and I wasn't really sure what was going on until really close to the end. So I think there's about 20 different YA books that I really enjoyed. So next time I'm talking about how I often don't like YA books, I need to remember this list because clearly that's not true. And sure, there might be a lot of YA books that I don't like, but there's also a lot of adult books that I don't like. So, well, I do tend to think that adult books are more likely to be suited to me just because I'm an adult. That's not always true, and I will keep picking up YA books that I think look like they might be something I would enjoy. And with that in mind, do let me know if you think you know of some YA books that I might really enjoy that I haven't mentioned today. Or if you have read any of the ones that I have talked about today, I would love to talk with you more about them down in the comments. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.